The myth of the struggling solo writer in the garret writing by themselves is really a myth. You know, it's no shame to co-author a book and to write a book with a partner. After all, you don't change your oil in your car by yourself. You get help. You don't paint your house by yourself. Why should writing be any different? That's what we'll be talking about today, how to successfully co-author a book. Hi, I'm Dan Janal. I've written more than a dozen books by myself, I might add. I have not co-authored any books, but I am a book coach, developmental editor, and ghostwriter, and I help those people write their books. So maybe that's a minor form of co-authoring too. And today we're going to learn more about how to successfully write your books with a partner. Our guest today is Jeff C. West, who's written many books by himself and also with co-authors as well. So he'll tell us the pros and cons and how to make a successful venture out of writing a book with a partner. So welcome, Jeff.
Thank you, Dan. It's such an honor to be with you today. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Oh, my pleasure. Jeff, why would someone want to write a book with a co-author instead of, having the glory for themselves?
Well, the easiest answer to that is that two things happen when you write with a co-author. Number one, as a business model, it's a good idea because as you write, the percentage of people who actually make a living writing is relatively small. I forget, I think there's over 1 million books published each year, and a lot of them don't sell very well. But when you do take on a co-author, what you're doing is you're expanding your reach. So as a business model, it makes sense. My latest one, I co-authored with Bob Berg. Bob is a huge name in sales training and sales leadership training. He's been doing it for decades on stage as one of the big time Hall of Fame speakers. And so when we did our parable together, it actually expanded my reach further than I had ever expanded it before. And I had a decent reach, but it gives you a business model boost in that arena. So if your goal is to actually bring in money with your book, that's a good idea. If your goal is not so much about the money in the book, then you may do it a little bit differently because if it's about elevating you to a stage, raising your level, things that Dan coaches you guys about, I'm sure, then it may be a different model. But the other reason that it's kind of a good idea, at least I think so, as far as co-authoring goes, is it also expands your subject matter. Now, I can easily go into and write any book that I want to write. I say easily, it's a process. It's not like you're much quicker and better at getting it on a timely basis than I am because I intentionally take time and I let it stew like I'm making a good sauce and I reduce it down and all that. But it gives me the ability to not have to create all of the main points myself. And so it works well that my primary genre, as you know, is a business fable, business parable. And so if it's not all of mine, then it gives me some different points that I can teach. My first book was called The Unexpected Tour Guide. It was all me. Well received, sold thousands of copies, and it did well. That being said, it was good. I enjoyed it, loved the story. But as I began to think a little bit differently, I reached out to two good friends of mine. One is Bob Berg, who you and I both know, and the other is John David Mann. And John David Mann and Bob wrote the Go-Giver series. The Go-Giver sold more than 1 million copies. And that's only the first book in the series. I don't know what all the total sales are, but they're a lot. And I was thinking about tweaking my business model and doing the co-authorships. And so I had talked to Bob about it first, and then John and I actually had lunch. He was on a book tour in Waco, Texas, and I went up and had lunch with him. And we talked about the idea and what it does. And I find it very fulfilling to work with a co-author. Can it be challenging? Maybe so at times, because you got two people trying to get one project done. And but in my case, I'm the lead writer, so it makes it maybe it just makes it a little bit easier for me. I think my co-authors would tell you it was good for them as well. Lisa Wilbur was my co-author on Said the Lady with the Blue Hair. But and I just actually, Dan, I just finished another one. It's I finished the first draft. We're going through rewrites with a co-author now, and it's about financial principles. And you'll love this because I know how creative you are. The opening line in the book. Well, first off, the subject matter is teaching people mistaken beliefs about money that basically rob them of their future, and teach them how to think differently about money and success, and then how to make some solid principles happen. The opening line in the book is, all right, everybody on the ground. Shh, shh. And I started in a bank heist. It's going to catch people off guard. Nobody expects that in a business parable. But my co-author had some great principles he wanted to teach, and so it worked well.
Very clever. So, what are some rules for success in working with a co-author?
Be very clear about your expectations both ways.
Hmm.
In my case, it's a business model for me, so there's some business arrangements that have to be agreed upon. But it's the process itself. I basically, as the lead writer, I set the stage for the process. I say, well, I want to get with my co-author at least once a week during the research process, sometimes once every other week if things are going really quickly. And together in those Zoom calls, I do two things. I interview my co-authors so that I understand uh, what they want to teach, where their mindset comes from. And also I interview them about everything that's happened to them that brought them to where they are, because that's great research material for working little things into your storyline. Like on the last one, I actually interviewed a hostage negotiator because the way I was taking the thing through the bank heist situation. And so, but the process. It's about being clear up front. Okay, these are the expectations as far as us working together goes. This is about how long I want the research to go through. This is how long it should take us to do the first draft. And then I constantly, each time I would do a pretty good chunk, at least a chapter, but sometimes 2 or 3 chapters, shoot it off to the co-author, let them read it. And I would say, give me any feedback that you have on it, if there are things you want to tweak, and how you think it's going. And then we work through that together. The last one with Bob Berg, Streetwise to Saleswise, it was another example of that. Bob and I communicated, oh gosh, probably when I started the research and the planning was right after the 1st of January in 2023, because I'd pretty much gotten the storyline in my head by that point that I wanted to do. Bob and I were on the phone constantly. I would shoot things back and forth. He would give me his feedback. We would play with different ideas in the storyline, but it was regular communication, almost like an interview. And then two people getting together and working through how to make a better book together. The key for a co-authorship to work is for both of you to really want to produce a great book. And as long as that's the goal, you can work through anything where you may not see things eye to eye. And fortunately, I don't know if it's my personality or my co-author's personalities thus far. There's not been many areas where we didn't see pretty much eye to eye on anyway. With the new one, I've just sent that off to my co-author, the draft of the new book. And I told him, I said, I want you to take about 2 weeks and just devour this. Go into it, take notes, make suggestions, anything you want to do. And then when I do the rewrite, which will be the first big rewrite, then we'll turn it into the book. And then I'll get with you or another developmental editor, and I'll have them, okay, do your magic here. Tell me what you would do, what you would change. And it's kind of funny. John David Mann, when he was prepping all of us in his class, I've just finished my first year in John's class, and he was prepping us about working with you need good editors, developmental editors, copy editors, line by line editors. And he was saying, now understand, when they get the feedback to you, it may not always be fun. but just remember that both of you have a goal to make a book that is good and that sells. So,
Okay, well, it sounds like you don't have many disagreements with your co-authors, which is wonderful. But I'm wondering what would happen, or what advice would you give when there is a serious disagreement where you think the story should go one way and he thinks it should go another way? Since he's the client, is the customer always right, or are you the expert and the lead author say, no, I think this is the way it should be? How would you handle that kind of situation?
oh, that's such a great question. With me, the first thing I would do, and it's kind of funny, this has a lot to do with my leadership background and skills that I learned in that. Number one, if a disagreement of that level comes up, I'm going to, number one, control my emotions.
Hmm.
Then I'm going to empathize because their perspective is different from mine. We all come to the table with everything that has happened in our lives, and that's the world we see. Doesn't mean it's the same for everybody else. So someone else may have a different perspective, and they definitely may have some different views on things. And when with me, it's more about coming together on it. It's not so much about me being the lead or them being the client. It's more about let's come together. Let's make this a great book. And then I would ask questions. Tell me why that perspective. Why do you feel like that perspective is the right one? And I'll ask questions to make sure I understand. Once I understand that, and I'll certainly I'll empathize with what's going on. And if it's something I think is important to shift, I'll say, but let me see if I can shift your perspective, and I'll walk them through why I think the other is better. In some cases, I think theirs is better. And I look, when it comes to producing a great book, my goal is a great book. My goal is not to feed my ego. And so if what they're thinking is better, I'm all for it. But it really hasn't been too much of an issue in my case. And maybe with me, it's also because, again, I'm client based, so I'm seeking those relationships like that. And I remember when I first met with Lisa Wilbur when we were co-authoring Said the Lady with the Blue Hair. One of the things I did, I said, Lisa, tell me, what is it you want to accomplish from this book? What's the main thing you're trying to get out there? And Lisa is a single woman, and she has raised a child on her own. And she basically, her main message that she wanted to get out there was women need to be self-sufficient. Even if they're in a wonderful marriage, you never know when life can take a twist on you. So women need to be self-sufficient. And that was her main thought process. So as I interviewed her about that, and then I began to weave that into the storyline, I got tickled at her one day. She said, "This is crazy. You listen." I started laughing, and I said, "Well, that's a good thing." But as we would do different parts of the book, it was the same thing. I would send her things, and I would interview her pretty regularly. Lisa and I still communicate at least once a week, and that Blue Hair came out almost 16, 18 months ago now. But she and I started doing a live show and together, and so we communicate every week anyway. But it's about, in my case, it's about finding out what my co-author is really trying to accomplish, because I am doing it as a business model. But there's another way. John David Mann, who again, as I mentioned, my writing coach, he's been co-authoring books for, I think of his 39 plus books, I think every one of them are co-authored, or either that or they're ghostwritten. And in his case, he didn't do it that way. He says, "I've never had." He said, "I'll have my time with the co-author, but then it's me. I'm writing it, and that's worked really well." When someone has 39 books, I think 9 of them New York Times bestsellers, may have a little bit more leverage on that than I would have had the same situation come up.
Sure. In your experience, are both people writing the book, or are you writing the book and interviewing the client, or what other models or scenarios have you seen?
In my case, I'm writing the book. The co-author and I worked through the plot lines, worked through the things that we're going to, in my case, with the business fable, the things we're going to be teaching, or business parable. Fables actually involve animals, parables involve people, so I write business parables so
Hmm.
far. But so it's been me as the lead writer. That's the model that I'm the most comfortable with. Um, I have seen other arrangements where 2 people would write one chapter and they would take turns writing chapters. And that's good if handled well. If you handle it well, so it's okay that both of you write in your own voice in alternating chapters or alternating sections of a chapter, you can make that work just fine. If you're trying to write the book in one voice from 2 people, it can be a little bit challenging. And so there's a rule of thumb that I believe in wholeheartedly, is that you need to write from your own truth. And that means it doesn't matter what your book's about. It doesn't matter the top, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. You need to write your own truth, because that's what makes it worth writing. There are thousands of books out there on sales. Most of them are probably pretty good. I mean, I can't remember ever reading a bad one. They're probably out there too, but for the most part, there's so many books on sales. The only way you can make it stand out or make it get your own differentiation is if you can write your own truth, your own life experiences, and let that color what you produce. And so in my case, I've always been the lead writer. That's probably the only way I would accept it. I've got literally right now, Dan, I've got 3 people lined up that have all said yes, and they want to be next. And with all of them, I'll be the lead writer. I'll work very hard to make sure it's something they love when we're through. But it's like with the blue hair, Lisa Wilbur, and even with the Streetwise with Bob Berg, they both have loved the finished product so much. It's a joy for me to see their reaction to it.
Wonderful. Jeff, tell us, who is your ideal client and how can they get in touch with you?
The ideal client for me is someone who normally is in a business world of some sort. Because again, my preferred genre is, even though I'm working on a novel now that I think you and I've talked about before, time travel, that's just me. But my preferred genre is the business parable. So I'm taking people's lessons and doing that in such a way that I can write the fiction. And so the right candidate for someone that wants to work with me is someone who's got a successful business that they've built, they know things and they've been teaching things, and they're now looking to elevate themselves to a higher platform, or they're looking to use the book in a business goal. I tell everybody I meet with, number one, if your goal is to make a lot of money writing books, the a business fable or business parable, things of that nature, aren't necessarily going to do that. There are exceptions, obviously, like The Go-Giver or Who Moved My Cheese. By the way, my writing coach, John David Mann, wrote the sequel to that. He ghost wrote that for them. It's called Out of the Maze. It's awesome. But it's someone who's wanting to use the book for a business purpose. Because I'll tell them, if you're not going to do that, my fee's too high for you. Because I'm going to charge. My fee is really high on this, and I got tickled the other day, Dan. I saw someone who writes for people. His fee was $500,000. I'm nowhere near in that range, but my fee is still substantial. I said, if it's not a good business move for you, don't you dare do this with me. I don't want to do that. But the people who seek me out, they know, okay, I'm going to make more than that when I utilize the book. And the best way for them to get in touch with me, if that is their goal, they can go to my website, jeffcwest.com, and they'll get in touch with me. But I have a special website for those who want to do a book with me. It's called coauthoryourmessage.com. And then it will do the same. It just takes them to a page on my website. But if someone's wanting to co-author and they've got a message, it just makes sense to do it that way.
Great. Thanks, Jeff, for joining us. And thanks, everyone, for listening today. I've interviewed other co-authors in my podcast series. You can find them on my YouTube channel, Write Your Book in a Flash with Dan Janal. You'll find different perspectives for different kinds of books as well, and some things with more conflict as well. So Jeff's been very lucky in his career. Other people I've interviewed have worked through some other issues, and you can learn more about how they resolve those issues and may remain friends as well when you check out those episodes. So thanks everyone for joining us. And thanks again, Jeff.
My pleasure. Thanks, Stan.